The restaurant fell silent. The lively chatter and clinking of glasses faded into a hushed murmur. The air was thick, not with the aroma of food, but with pure, unadulterated embarrassment. Everyone had heard him. Everyone had heard the Millionaire CEO, Richard Wallace, call the young black server stupid. They watched her handle the moment with quiet grace, her voice calm, and then watched her retreat. And they saw the look in the eyes of the man sitting opposite Richard, the investor, Mr. Tanaka. But Richard, as always, was oblivious. He was too wrapped up in himself, too confident in his money to sense the storm brewing. He let out a loud laugh, shattering the tension. "Now that we've had our little drama," he said smugly, "let's talk real business." Mr. Tanaka's expression remained unchanged. He simply nodded, taking a slow, deliberate sip of his tea. His face was a mask of calm, but his eyes were sharp, missing nothing. The presentation began. Richard swiped through slides on his tablet, spitting out numbers about profits and market dominance. He flashed that fake smile rich men use when they think they own the world. "We'll take your company global," he declared. "My leadership has never failed a deal." Across the table, the two younger investors from Singapore exchanged a subtle, knowing glance. They'd seen how Richard spoke to the waitress, and now his every word felt hollow and tainted by arrogance. Mr. Tanaka was a statue of silence for most of the meeting, just listening. His silence was powerful, the kind that makes people nervous. Richard, however, mistook it for admiration. He leaned forward, grinning. "Mr. Tanaka, I trust the proposal speaks for itself. We both know how business works. It's about results, not feelings." For the first time, Tanaka looked directly at him, his voice calm but carrying immense weight. "Results without respect are temporary, Mr. Wallace." Richard chuckled. "I agree. That's why I hire good people, not emotional ones." The joke landed with a thud. The two younger men shifted uncomfortably. Just then, the waitress Maya passed by again, clearing plates from another table. Richard didn't even look at her, but Tanaka's eyes quietly followed her. The way she carried herself, the polite smile she offered despite what had happened, it spoke volumes about her character. As she neared their table, she asked gently, "Would you gentlemen like dessert or more coffee?" Her voice was steady, polite, untouched by bitterness. Richard waved a dismissive hand. "No, thank you, just the bill." She nodded and left. Tanaka turned to him, his tone neutral. "You don't like coffee, Mr. Wallace?" Richard shrugged. "Not after that mess. Can't afford another accident today." He said it like a joke, but nobody laughed. A moment later, Maya returned with the bill, placing it neatly in front of Richard. "Thank you for dining with us," she said softly, then stepped away. Richard didn't offer a word of thanks. He just grabbed the paper and pulled out a gold credit card. Tanaka slowly reached for his coat. When Maya was out of earshot, he spoke, his voice colder now. "You know, Mr. Wallace, how a man treats those he considers beneath him says more about him than how he speaks to his equals." Richard smirked. "Oh, come on, don't start moralizing. We all have bad days." "She made a mistake," I reacted. "It's just business, nothing personal." Tanaka looked down at his teacup. "It may have been business to you," he said finally, "but to me it was a test." Richard blinked. "A test of what?" Tanaka looked up, his expression calm but cutting. "Of character." Richard tried to laugh it off. "Character doesn't close deals, Mr. Tanaka. Performance does." The older man stood slowly, buttoning his coat. "And yet, your performance today revealed everything I needed to know." Richard frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" Tanaka adjusted his cuffs. "It means this meeting is over." The room went still. "Sir?" one of the younger investors whispered. Tanaka nodded firmly. "We're done here, gentlemen." Richard laughed nervously. "Wait, are you joking? You're walking away from a $200 million deal over a spilled cup of coffee?" Tanaka's eyes hardened. "No," he said quietly. "I'm walking away from a man who thinks respect is optional. You can't be serious." But Tanaka was already turning to leave. I'm very serious, Mr. Wallace. You see, I don't just invest in companies. I invest in people. And today, I saw the kind of man you are. As Tanaka and his team walked out, Maya passed them. She smiled politely. Thank you for visiting, sir. He paused, bowed slightly, and said softly, No, young lady. Thank you for reminding me what real grace looks like. Back at the table, Richard sat frozen, his confidence finally shattered. He stared at the empty chair, realizing too late that his empire was crumbling. Not over a bad business plan, but over one cruel, thoughtless word. He came to make millions but left having lost something far more valuable: respect, reputation, and the deal that defined his success. In that silent restaurant, he finally understood. Humility is priceless, and he could no longer afford it. The echo of departing footsteps still rang in the air long after Mr. Tanaka left the restaurant. The once bustling breakfast room now felt heavy with silence, the kind that stings your pride and fills the space between every heartbeat. Richard Wallace sat motionless, staring at the empty seat across the table. His gold watch glinted under the light, but even that seemed to mock him now. He tried to laugh, a small nervous sound, but it died before it reached his lips. He'll come around, he muttered to himself, trying to sound convincing. He just needs time. He signaled for another coffee, pretending that nothing had happened. But deep down he felt something unfamiliar, the uneasy hum of doubt. Maya, the same black server he had insulted earlier, approached quietly. She didn't look angry or bitter, only professional. Would you like me to bring anything else, sir? She asked. Her voice was steady, graceful. She was doing her job, better than he had done his. Richard nodded stiffly. Just the check and another cup. She nodded, turned, and disappeared toward the counter. Her calmness unsettled him even more. How could she stay so composed after what he'd said? Why wasn't she trembling or apologizing like most people did around him? He drummed his fingers against the table, staring at the door through which Tanaka had left. $200 million. Gone. Just like that. Over what? A misunderstanding? A stupid comment? His pride tried to twist the truth, tried to tell him that Tanaka had overreacted. But the image of the man's steady eyes, filled with quiet disappointment, refused to fade. Respect is not optional. Tanaka's voice replayed in his head, again and again. The words stuck to him like ash after a fire. Across the room, Maya returned with the check and the coffee. She placed both gently on the table. Here you go, sir, she said softly and turned to walk away. Something in Richard broke. Wait, he said. His tone wasn't loud or commanding this time, just tired. Maya turned back slowly, her expression unreadable. Yes, sir? He looked at her, the arrogance gone from his face, replaced by something almost human. About earlier, he began, struggling for the words. I shouldn't have said what I did. His voice trembled slightly, as if the apology burned his throat on the way out. Maya blinked, surprised but calm. It's all right, sir, she said politely. You don't need to explain. But he did, for himself more than for her. No, he said quietly. It's not all right. I shouldn't have treated anyone that way. Her eyes softened a little. We all have moments we wish we could take back, she said gently. Then, after a pause, the lesson comes from what we do next. Richard sat there, speechless. His mind, usually filled with numbers, profits, and deadlines, was suddenly still. He nodded slowly. You're right, he whispered. When she left, he didn't touch his coffee. He just stared at it, the steam curling upward like a ghost of what could have been. Outside the restaurant, the city kept moving. Cars honking, people rushing, deals being made. But inside that room, Richard's world had stopped spinning. For the first time in his career, he wasn't thinking about money or success. He was thinking about how easily respect could be lost and how hard it was to earn it back. His phone buzzed. His assistant. Sir, Mr. Tanaka's team just canceled all negotiations, she said nervously. They've withdrawn completely. Richard closed his eyes, his hand trembling. Did they say why? Only one line, she replied. He said, "I do not work with men who forget humanity." The words hit harder than any loss he had ever faced. He ended the call and sat in silence. The numbers danced in his head, 200 million, but for the first time, they meant nothing. He looked around the restaurant again, seeing things differently now. The waiters moving quickly, the tired smiles, the patience, the unnoticed dignity. They were the gears that kept his world turning, and he had disrespected one of them like she was invisible. When he finally stood to leave, he placed the credit card on the bill, then paused. He reached into his wallet, pulled out a thick stack of cash, and left it on the tray. Not as guilt money, but as acknowledgement, a silent attempt to balance what could never truly be undone. As he stepped outside, the sunlight felt colder. The streets were loud, but inside his chest it was painfully quiet. Back inside, Maya found the tip, her brows lifting slightly. She didn't smile or roll her eyes. She just shook her head softly, whispering, "Maybe he'll remember next time." Meanwhile, Richard walked down the busy street toward his office, each step heavier than the last. Every reflection in a window seemed to stare back at him, the man who had everything but forgot how to be decent. He had built an empire on deals and handshakes, but it only took one careless insult to destroy it. Not because of business, but because of character. He stopped at a crosswalk watching strangers rush past. Each face, each story, once just background noise to his ambition, now looked different. He saw them for what they were, people trying their best, just like Maya. And for the first time in years, Richard Wallace whispered something he had never said before. "I was wrong." The words were quiet, almost lost in the city's noise, but in that moment they carried more weight than all the millions he had just lost. Because what he did not know yet, what fate was about to teach him, was that money could rebuild a company, but only humility could rebuild a man. Just 1 week. That's all it took for Richard Wallace's empire to crumble. You have probably seen the headlines. Arrogant CEO loses 200 men deal after insulting waitress. The story went viral. A single moment of cruelty, caught on camera and leaked anonymously, had brought a titan of industry to his knees. Everywhere he went, whispers followed him. The man once hailed as a business genius was now a cautionary tale. Sponsors dropped him, investors pulled out. His company's stock plummeted. His phone buzzed constantly, not with praise, but with frantic calls from his PR team, trying to salvage what was left of his reputation. One night he sat alone in his vast, silent office, staring at his reflection in the window. He didn't see a powerful CEO. He saw a tired, hollow man. The words that had cost him everything echoed in his mind. "Are you stupid?" He could still see the waitress's face, calm, kind, and deeply hurt. The quiet dignity in her eyes haunted him more than the lost deal. He opened his laptop, desperate for a distraction, and stumbled upon an article. The waitress who stayed kind. It was about Maya, the young woman he had insulted. Reporters had tracked her down, but she refused to speak ill of him. She simply said, "I forgive him. We all make mistakes. I just hope he learns something from it." Her words hit him like a physical blow. Forgiveness? He didn't deserve it. Yet her grace cut through the noise of his guilt and shame. The next morning, Richard did the unexpected. He slipped out of his office alone and walked back to the very hotel where his world had fallen apart. He found Maya during the breakfast shift. She froze when she saw him, not with fear, but with surprise. "Mr. Wallace," she said softly, "you came back." He couldn't meet her eyes. "I came to apologize," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "What I said was unforgivable. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness, I'm here to take responsibility." Her expression softened. "You don't owe me anything, sir. What matters is what you do after you make a mistake." "I lost everything," he admitted, his voice cracking. "But I think what I really lost that day was myself." Maya looked at him and said something that changed everything. "Maybe it's not a loss, sir. Maybe it's a start." For the first time in years, a genuine smile touched Richard's lips. He reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. "This can't fix what I did," he said, "but I'd like to make a donation to the staff fund here in your name. I need to do something good with no strings attached. That's how I'll start over." As he left the restaurant, the world seemed different. It wasn't because his problems were solved, but because he had finally started to rebuild the one thing that truly mattered: himself. Soon, the headlines shifted. Disgraced CEO launches foundation for service workers. The same world that had torn him down now watched, intrigued, as a new story unfolded. A story that proves that while one act of cruelty can destroy a life, one act of kindness has the power to rebuild an empire.